Welcome to the Inner Circle Boardrooms Backstage Pass. My name is Kate Chauhan. I'm here with a very special guest here from India. Today we're going to be talking about the Indian economy, particularly India, both the short-term and the long-term risk opportunities there. If you're a busy professional on the go interested in current business affairs, whether it be business, finance or leadership, this is the channel for you. Subscribe by clicking on the bell icon below for weekly updates. Now, I'm usually here with my co-host Mike Elwood. Unfortunately, he couldn't be with us here today. We do have Vijay, who's going to be talking to us about the Indian economy. Vijay, for the sake of our audience, give us a brief introduction in terms of who you are.
Sure, thanks for having me here. My name is Vijay Aditya. I'm co-founder and CEO of ekgaon Technologies. ekgaon is a technology-focused enterprise working in rural India, connecting rural markets to urban centers of markets as well as knowledge and information. We have been working for past 18 years in the rural market sphere, largely connecting agri value chain to the forward markets, helping farmers access better market price and have better livelihoods. As part of other roles, I also mentor startup in various roles with the various incubators in which I am either as a mentor or a jury. I also co-founder as well as director of the Business Correspondent Federation, which is the second largest franchisee network of financial service providers, largely in rural India, with nearly a million touch points.
Thank you very much. That said, firstly, let's start off with COVID.
So the current situation, to say that we got into a lockdown situation quite fast without any time for preparation. That led to many challenges as such, and one of the biggest challenge was the blockage of supply chains. As everybody understands, India is a continent-sized country, 1.3 billion people. We have more people than whole of Africa. So in such a situation, if you stop without giving a notice supply chains which are poorly organized in any way, there are bound to be complications. But thankfully, we haven't suffered a major issue, largely because of the unorganized nature of the economy of India, which came as a kind of a protective shield for most people. However, our operations, which are largely dependent upon courier services, postal services, were hampered because all transit was stopped. Since transit and movement of goods were stopped, we suffered a little bit in the initial 1.5 to 2 months time. After that, slowly we are trying to recover from the situation.
In terms of the lockdown and business impact, logistically getting goods and services across India has been disrupted. What sort of declines are you seeing in terms of business transactions and activity?
There has been a massive decline in business transaction and activity. I think the first quarter of this financial year, our financial year starts from April to July. June end, we have got the numbers just 2 days back, and those numbers themselves are indicative. We are the major economy in the world which have the lowest downturn in GDP at 23.9, which is the biggest drop of GDP in any time in 70 years of India's history, and 40 years of GDP numbers being shared, which itself indicate the massive downturn which has been there. India largely being an unorganized economy, 95% of its people are employed in the small and marginal businesses, which essentially means that all these businesses are impacted, hence leading to closures because their supply chains are shorter, the connectivity isn't that great. So all of them suffered in a very big way. Unfortunately, the government support packages which were announced were not adequate enough to make them functional. As per the Association for Small and Medium Enterprises, they have projected that their capacity utilization this year would be only 30%, which means 70% capital utilization will not be there. Hence, that of all the working force in India, which is about 95% in small and medium industries, only 30% of them will get jobs. So we are into a major slowdown going forward. We really don't know how long it will continue.
Know that India's population are young professionals. Will this push back India in terms of their expansion? I was in India back in December meeting with business leaders, and one of the conversations we were having was around the vast number of opportunities in the country itself as opposed to emerging markets. What I'm trying to understand is how much will it slow it down? Is it a short-term slowdown, or do we think it will be a long-term impact?
It's a very good question. If you understand, out of all major economies, India's economy is largely internal economy. Our export economy is very small. And so is true for the sector of food and agriculture, where our economy is pretty large, very, very large. One of the largest internal economy in agriculture and food is very large in the country. So our internal, like I said, the economy itself is very large, but the economy works only when the consumption is there, demand is there. Now, the demand is driven by largely middle class and to some extent rural communities. 65% people of India live in rural India. Now, the demand will only be there if they have jobs. Unfortunately, more than, as per the latest estimates which are coming, 20 million jobs have already been lost. Now, this is a huge number. This is 20 million salaried jobs, not the wage job. Wage job loss is approximately around 80 million. So we're talking about 100 million job loss in India, which essentially means that there is a total reduction in the consumption pattern of them. The data which we have just recently got 2 days back shows that there is a contraction in consumption, private consumption, by 27%, which is a huge drop in just a quarter. Massive drop in a quarter. Now that will definitely have an impact on the economy, which is very, very clear there would be an impact on the economy. So how will opportunities for the business as such would be there, but those would be of very different kind, because right now the businesses are fighting for survival. Most of the small businesses would be fighting for survival, and the closures and we will see all those things. Our bankruptcy laws are very, very recent. They aren't very strong. So which essentially means that when closure will happen, the businesses will not be able to save themselves against debtors and other people. So which will be a huge challenge as such.
Why do you think the government hasn't done much for its people and businesses?
Earlier, we were comparing various economies. We were talking about UK, we were talking about US, we were talking about European Union, not that the UK is out of European Union. If you just see the package that European Union announced, it's about $250 billion euro package, which about almost $1 trillion euro package, dollar package has been announced by European Union. And let me just pick out one particular budget item in that, which is the agriculture budget in European Union. That's the package that has been announced for agriculture for EU is $20 billion. Now, $20 billion, out of which 50% is grant. It is not a loan or any other form of investment that is given. Unfortunately, if we just compare that with the Indian government's response to it, it has also announced a total package of about $20 billion overall, but of which only $2 billion is essentially grants. And that too is largely focused on farmers, and that was not also linked to what COVID situation. It was a pre-COVID direct benefit transfers to the farmers. That's all. Other than that, all what the government has announced recently is different kind of interest subvention schemes, which essentially means that if you take a loan, then 2 or 3% of that interest will be given by the government. You have to take the loan. Now, any loan that is taken by a business in a market which is slow, you cannot repay that loan in a long term until unless there is a long moratorium period. Unfortunately, government has not even looked into that. They have given a moratorium period of 6 months. Now, 6 months as a moratorium period is not there. There isn't any wage support being given to businesses that we will give wage support to your workers for a period of their, for a period till that point that your businesses are back in some form of shape. That has not been done, which is 95, like I said, 95% of workers in the small and medium industry. So recovery of all those businesses, which will take a much longer time. And mind you, we already know that Indian economy was slowing down even before COVID. We had one of the worst fall in economy in the October of 2019, and going forward without essentially cash input in the economy by the government, just because there's nobody else to put the money into the businesses. The large businesses who have cash reserves will not invest in a weak market, that they will rather focus on consolidation of their businesses or looking at new opportunities in the form of mergers and acquisitions. So I think if you ask me which are the new areas, then the new areas currently, even in a weakening economy, since India is a very large economy, is the area of large-scale mergers and acquisitions and new opportunities, especially in the area of agriculture and food.
Back to your point about growth, we saw last year Amazon announced a £1 billion investment in India. India is a large continent in itself.
If you ask me, India has regional hubs of development where development is happening faster. And these are centered largely around metropolitan cities, which are Mumbai, Delhi, Chennai, Bangalore, and Calcutta. These are the major hubs of industry and businesses. And these are also major population hubs. Because these are the population hub, obviously new business, what we call as gig businesses are looking at this area. So be it Uber, be it Ola, be it all these aggregators based company, be it delivery companies, or be it Amazon, Flipkart and other e-commerce ventures. All of them have large businesses. More than 50 to 60% of businesses is in these 5, 7 or 10 major cities. So of course there's a concentration of pockets of the business there. But during Corona, the impact has been total. It's not that impact is marginal. The impact is almost across the country. So if you mentioned about the Amazon investment. Now, every large company knows that India is a very large market. Yeah. Every large company, and specifically in the area of food and retail sector. These are the two sectors which have been, India is the largest retail market which has remained unorganized for the largest amount of time. And it is very clearly and very obvious that all major retailers will need to invest in India. So Amazon is investing, Walmart is investing, IKEA is investing, everybody is investing, not just them. And in fact, recently in Reliance Group, there has been a $20 billion investment in Reliance digital platforms, which is a subsidiary of Reliance Group. But essentially, the investment is coming into JioMart, which is a Reliance e-commerce ventures, which is very intricately linked with the Reliance retail venture, where consolidation is already happening. Now, within just 2 months, Reliance has become the largest retailer in the country by acquisition of another group called Future Groups. So if you ask me, these, like I said, the largest expansion thing, because food is, nobody is going to stop eating food. That is very clear. Agriculture and food will remain a very strong stay. How and what will be, way it will be organized is the challenge that is there. And since traditionally in these agriculture sector, the investment being done is very low, both government investment and the private sector investment. And in fact, the foreign direct investment have just started coming after 2013 or 14. A small bit of foreign direct investment in the agriculture sector has started coming out, but it is very little. You know, it's just $2-3 billion every year, which is nothing compared to the size of market India offers. So, like you asked, what are the other areas of investment opportunities in India? Considering it is largely unorganized, obvious areas are aggregation-based enterprises, which could be financial technology, fintech companies, which could be insurance companies, which could be aggregators in transport, logistics and transports and warehousing, because that's what largely the retail businesses run on. So these are the areas where investment will be larger. And I foresee that next 10 years for India is for agriculture in India, despite the government or the policies of the government, simply because the market size or the sector is too large to be ignored by major global period for a long time. That time has now come.
Talk me through some of those opportunities that you see in agriculture and your long-term projections are.
We work with about 25,000 farmers right now, which are directly working with us.
Yeah.
And overall, we work with around 300,000 farmers across various dimensions of our supply chain. So we work across the entire supply chain from production, improving production on productivity of the crops that the farmers grow, and then connecting them with essential services like finance and insurance. These are not delivered by us. We partner with financial companies to deliver credit to the farmer. We are the first company in the country to deliver a private finance, because largely this sector is dominated by government-backed public sector banks. We are the first private company to provide agriculture credit to farmers, which is popularly called as crop loans, short-term loan called crop loans. These help farmers to avoid local lending for investing in crop cycle. Then we collect, buy from the farmers. We have organized them as aggregation clusters in the form of farmer producer companies, which is a new kind of company format in India. And we take production from them, take it to the market and sell it in the market, both in retail and bulk markets. We sell across all major platforms, online platforms. We reach out right now to 600 cities under the brand name called ekgaon. Plus, we supply in bulk to almost all major food companies in the country.
And have you seen any defaults?
There was a moratorium that was offered by the government with the help of the Reserve Bank of India. That moratorium ended just last week, but there is a recommendation even by the Supreme Court of India that moratorium should be extended by 2 years. Government hasn't responded as yet on that request. It is what the media news says, that government is wanting to leave it to the banks to decide whether they want to offer a moratorium to their lenders or not. But I think that would be necessary. Otherwise, the defaults will happen. The defaults expected in the retail sectors are upward of 50%, which is a very, very high default rate. Considering a lot of people have, like I said earlier, over 20 million salaried people have lost jobs. So they will not be able to make retail loans payments. So defaults will be there. Business defaults as of now publicly are not coming out, but obviously they are happening because so many in Bangalore city, which is a large city, 50,000 retailers have closed shops in one city only. 50,000 retailers. There's a because these data and reports are not coming, considering we have media's focus is relatively not on economy.
Yeah.
The news is not coming out, but of 1 million retailers have closed shops in just 3 months, which most of them would have taken credit of one kind or another, which essentially means when banks start reporting their default rates, they will have to include these default rates. We don't know right now. That data isn't available. But situation going forward, if increased moratorium period is not given, default rate will be there because the demand is low.
I think if you're an investor and you're looking for long-term returns, I actually do believe India would be a good market to enter because it doesn't have the maturity of the infrastructure as some other countries. What's your take on that?
Obviously, from a long-term perspective, India's growth prospects are bright, and there's absolutely no doubt about it. For a simple reason that we have a very young population which will look for employment at one point in time or other.
Yeah.
The economy has taken a battering right now, largely because of bad policy decisions. But going forward, there would be a bounce back which will happen. Now, the shape and size of that bounce back, we don't know right now. We can't do those kind of projections right now because no economist is actually willing to do those projections, considering there's a total lack of information and data which is coming. But going forward, there are sectors which are very clear. In a economy where demand has come down, one of the obvious areas which attracts a lot of interest is the financial lending area or financial solutions, fintech, because you try to borrow and it is already happening. People are borrowing against gold. Gold loan has become suddenly very, very popular.
Yeah.
We are getting reports that millions and millions of people are going for gold loan,
Yeah.
pledging their jewelry to take money to just to remain afloat as families. So financial technology, fintech-based companies will have a huge opportunity for expansion of business. Digital financial services will have a huge area of interest. India is one of the least insured country in the world in all kinds of insurances, vehicle, personal accident, or life. So obviously that's another area of very big area of investment and interest. Then I said agriculture. Agriculture is waking up. That's a huge elephant and giant which is waking up right now, because it is the only sector of the economy in the latest quarterly data which is growing at 3.4%, whereas every single other sector is in negative growth, which itself shows that agriculture is the only way of recovery in coming few years, which essentially also means, like I said, nobody is going to stop eating food, is that the investment in agriculture, this is the opportunate time. There would be a large-scale organization of businesses in agriculture, which is largely an unorganized sector in India. So huge amount of investment. If I just speak about the investment in agriculture, it will be in warehousing, it will be in logistics. One of the biggest area in agriculture that India lacks, we discussed it earlier, is agri-financing. India has a very weak agri-financing infrastructure, one of the weakest in the world. Somehow, traditionally, the policy-making framework has largely overlooked agriculture as an investment area. If you look back to China 30 years back, China decided that we will do major investment. China was a very poor agriculture country, but it decided that it will make major investment in agriculture, and through agriculture it will create a momentum, economic growth momentum. India did not do that. India focused on food security as and food security largely based on two crops, which is wheat and rice. So it didn't essentially look at long-term investment in agriculture. So we don't have even a single bank which is working in agriculture, dedicated to agriculture, whereas China's Agriculture Bank of China is the third largest bank in the world, whereas we don't have even a single one, whereas India is the second largest producer of almost all major agriculture commodities in the world. We don't, and that is unfortunately is a big wide area. That's an area of fantastic innovations which are possible. I told you about our experiment that we did, is that we created a pure digital platform for lending to farmer without any work. It's a mobile app on which we lend to farmer. First time in the country, nobody is doing it. Lending to the farmers, that's the platform that we have built. I believe agriculture infrastructure like warehousing, transport, logistics, and what we call as bridge financing systems for collateral development is the area where investment is required.
So just talk me through that payment solution that you've created for these farmers, and congratulations for being the first to the market as well. How does that actually work, and who's actually funding that?
So we have tied up with a microfinance company which takes the money from lenders. It lends us the money. It's digital platform. There's an app. On this app, our farmer producer companies representatives reach out to the farmers and say there's a loan available for you. You can take it. The farmer comes, his or her details are entered in the app. There's a biometric system on which the farmer puts on the phone's biometric. Then its loan application is digitally accepted. Their credit scoring is checked, and loan is given the next day directly in their bank accounts. They can withdraw the money immediately.
What sort of amounts?
The amount that we are giving as of now initially, so this is the first, this is the third crop cycle that we are following, third loan cycle in which we are. Both the first two loan cycle have been 100% repayment. We started with 20,000 Indian rupees. And we are going forward now to at least 50,000 Indian rupees per farmer. This is a loan largely given for them to buy farm inputs like seeds and fertilizers, organic fertilizers for their farms.
And what sort of payment terms are we talking? What sort of interest are they paying on that? Is it competitive?
It is competitive, yes, but the payment terms are the ones which is where innovation has been done from our side. Is that we have decided that we will not go by the standard market system. We created a loan product where you take out money, the amount of money that you need. Your loan is approved, money is available. So you need right now, immediately you need 20,000 rupees of your 40,000 loan. Take 20,000 now, and 20,000 you will need at the time of harvesting. So between harvesting period and selling period of the crop, the number of days are only 20 days. So instead of taking 40,000 for 4 months, you take 20,000 for 4 months and 20,000 for 20 days. So you essentially save on interest. So it's a very flexible loan model that we have created, in which the payment is one single payment. There's no EMI, no EMI at all, zero EMI. There's no loan fee, no application fee. There's no penalty. None of these things we have done. There's no insurance also. So all these cost saving that we are finding, although the interest is competitive in the market, because unfortunately we don't have those kind of credit lines available for us. But still, since we don't have these other costs, we actually give them at a much cheaper rate than the market rate. The cost, and it's being a digital loan totally, there's also a cost of not going to the bank and borrow the money.
And it's being funded by the supplier. So you've got a supply chain who would say, I will fund this farmer that invoice amount. And so it's then repaid back to that supplier, so to speak. Does there have to be an existing relationship between the farmer and that supplier, or any one of those suppliers can select whether to give that to farmer?
As of now, we are giving the loan only because we have just started last year, July last year. We just completed a year of the work. So as of now, we are limiting it to the farmers who are directly working with us.
Yeah.
But going forward, we want to open it up for other farmers as well that we work with.
Yeah.
So that's
what's the uptake on farmers taking access to the funds, or has COVID accelerated the fact that they do need to take that funding?
COVID has put a huge amount of pressure. In fact, initial reports of repayments of these microfinance loans, including our loan, has been very encouraging, that it shows that people have started repaying the loan. But people were started to repay the loan simply so that they can get the next loan.
Yeah.
That was the idea of repaying the old loan. So otherwise they will be devoid of the credit line. So there is a demand, very clear demand, which is of credit, which is there, which is obviously indicated by their pledging gold to get money, and other forms of lending suddenly getting activated like traditional money lenders. So obviously there's a great demand for credit.
It's good to see that you've grabbed the opportunity and identified a problem and a solution, which I think is fantastic, and I wish you all the success on that. Moving forward, where do you see innovation in agri-tech within India at the moment?
Indian agri-tech is essentially, there's a lot of interest in agri-tech in last 2 to 3 years in India, but it is largely focused on the periphery of the sector as such. When I say periphery, I mean it's largely focused on the supply chain and the selling part of the agri-value chain. It is not gone into the pre-harvesting value chain or the immediate post-harvesting value chain organization in there. I'm an active participant in many forums where we talk about these issues. There are a few product innovation that we are talking about in agriculture financing that will help us bring what we call a patient capital in agriculture sector, where return can be expected. That capital will help catalyze the supply chain much better. Once that start happening in a little more organized way, the clustering of these production systems will happen. Largely small farmers, very small farmers, during the lockdown were not badly affected as such. Large farmers were affected, but small farmers were not that much affected because their supply chain was shorter, like you said, local. Now, I would say that these people are, we need to understand the strength of these people. We should not say that these people are not essential to the system. I would say, contrary to that, these people are very essential for the system because they bring in a local level expertise of organization into the system. Now, how to co-opt or design a system for them to be a participant in a larger supply chain or a value chain is the question. And unfortunately, very little work has been done in that space, which is an area where I think investment is required, where I think research is required, and of course, financing mechanisms are required. We created immediately post-corona lockdown, we had an emergency kind of group, largely on WhatsApp, since we were on in a very early days of lockdown, to activate the supply chain which were blocked. We came out with mechanism in which supply chain can be opened. We found out mechanism in which transit permits, which were all came down dramatically, we will be activated. We worked on many recommendations which were given to the government, and to the credit of the government, many of those recommendations were accepted by the government. But like I said, measures which came out much later in the form of policy intervention for pushing the sector forward were very limited. Largely, like I said, government announced 100,000 crore rupees of agriculture infrastructure fund, but largely that fund was not a grant fund like the European Union fund, where 50% of it was a grant fund. Here, 100% of it was a loan, a facility which was made available for agriculture infrastructure development. But if you just understand from a simple point of view, any rural infrastructure, agriculture infrastructure, will not give returns immediately. It will take at least 3 to 4 years or 5 years time to return the money which is invested on, say, a warehouse. But government has given a moratorium period of 6 months. Now you build an infrastructure taking a loan, and then you start repaying after 6 months to the bank. How will you run the business?
Yeah.
You cannot run the businesses. So this infrastructure fund will remain underutilized simply because the appetite for absorption of such a credit is not there. Demand is there. Like we said, demand is there. And food demand will slow down in coming months because of the consumption, largely because private consumption is coming down.
Yeah.
But over a period of time, after 6 months or 7 months, the food demand will start catching up again and it will grow.
So what's the worst case scenario that could happen for a farmer right now?
The worst case scenario is actually going to happen very, very fast now. Like I said earlier, there was a huge migrant movement from cities to the village. Over 80 million people migrated back to small villages simply because the cities were not able to give them the social security network which was required by them. Now, all of these people who went eventually lost their jobs. There's no job for them to come back. So they went into agriculture again,
yeah.
which led to almost 15 to, as the data indicates right now, around 15 to 20% increase in the net cultivated area across the country, which essentially says that in coming October and November, there would be a very big harvest, very bumper harvest. Now, that is very unfortunate because bumper harvest should mean for a farmer that it will be a large profit, but not in India. Bumper harvest in India in a slow down market, in a market where demand is low and supply is surplus, will means that the prices will crash. When prices will crash, farmers will be at a loss. Only farmers will be at a loss. But unfortunately, till now, government hasn't announced any single measure which will protect farmers against this upcoming price crashes, which will put farmers into much more tragedy than they have faced in Corona.
What's the local feel for the government at the moment? How would you describe that?
In just last 2 weeks, data of, like we said, media hasn't been representing the shape of the economy very much. It is preoccupied with something else. People are not able to understand. They are not able to talk to each other that often to understand that I've also lost a job. Okay, you have also lost a job. So people are not able to understand the depth of their loss till now. But the economic data which has come, before the economic data, job loss data which has come, all this data has come in last 2 weeks, has put immense pressure on the government, and there's a big anger among the people which is growing up. And there would be the demand because clearly everybody knows that government hasn't done enough at all. So we don't know where we are looking forward to, whether the government will take any action or announce new measures. We are not sure because every single indicator as of now points that the slowdown, we are in a biggest recession of its time in India in 40 years. So we don't know where we are going at this point. It will go worse at least this year, the whole of this year. It will go worse and worse and worse, and then slow recovery can be expected March 2021. Slow recovery will start happening a little bit better, will start happening. Post then, hopefully, and that is completely contingent on how much money supply is ensured in the economy by the government. And credit alone is not going to work. Free cash flow is required.
And are you seeing the banks are doing enough to provide that facility for businesses, or are you seeing a contraction there?
A bank was pushed to provide that facility initially, and banks did provide some facility initially, but bank played very safe. They provided the renewal of the loans to the people who were already having a loan from the bank. They never accepted a new loan application. So a person who didn't have a credit relationship with a banking institution didn't get any loan. So largely all those businesses, and mind you, most businesses in India do not have credit relationships. 60% of Indian small and medium businesses do not have credit relationship with financial institutions simply because they don't give them. Bank do not recognize the collateral that they are offering. So 60% of them never get any money, and going forward, since the demand negative numbers of economy are showing, banks have gone into a contraction mode. They are not lending anymore. They are coming down very dramatically on the lending interest in lending as of now, even when the government is trying to push them to lend more.
So Vijay, are you positive about the future? We lived through the last recession. So how are you comparing that to this one?
Oh, this is the worst time ever. This is the worst time ever in the history of the country. Never before we have faced such a bad situation ever in the history of this country. We have a pandemic. On top of that, we have economic crisis at the same time. Two disasters at the same time. Now, in this, how the mood, both mine as well as most people, is very, very down. There's no doubt about it. But going forward, we can only hope for the better things to happen, because how bad we are already at the worst, how more bad it can happen. I think the recovery has to start somewhere. It will start somewhere. And since India's internal consumption is very high, we need to somehow trigger that internal consumption very, very high. We are not an export-led economy. We are an internal consumption-based economy. That is not happening. If that picture goes negative, which is my worry, then there's a chance that we would have a bad story. But going forward, like I said, hopefully by the end of this year and going forward early next year, things will start shaping up again. Things will start getting a little better. But government needs to do much, much more. You know, every single government, even Pakistan government and Bangladesh government, has done much more than the government of India. So it is very inadequate response that the government has given to both to the business and to the private individuals to safeguard their wages, which is a sad reality.
Yes, trying to figure out why that is with the government. Is that because of the size of the population of India? Is that the reason why the government is limited to what they can actually do? When you compare it to something like the UK, which only has 70 million, and the US, which is about 300 million, talking double, triple the size, particularly when you compare it to something like the United States. Is that the reason why the government hasn't been able to print its way out like some of the other economies have?
We actually haven't done that at all. In fact, we should have printed more money and pumped it in the economy. We haven't done at all that. I really don't know why the government doesn't want to do that at all, because that's an obvious thing for you to do. You cannot just focus your economy on budget deficit alone. Deficits right now can take a secondary interest that cannot be a primary interest. Whatever information that is coming out is saying that the government trying to protect its fiscal deficit to be in below 7%, which is already 7% right now. That is the reason why the government response is very weak. But I think it is largely weak for a very different reason, because the Prime Minister is one on a very populist mandate. and he believes, and people around him believe that that they are very popular among the people. So when you have this perception of popularity, you try to kind of ignore the reality when the reality hits you. I think it's a you know, ignorance is the better word to be used here. That you are being deliberately ignorant about the reality, even when the numbers speak something else. And like I said, a very important for any large economy, continent-sized economy like India, various institutions, including media, needs to play a very important role, because media is the mouthpiece of the people to the government and vice versa. Media isn't playing that role. It is not informing people about what the government is trying to do and what people's demand is. So in such a situation, what happens is that you bias your opinion in surveys which are opinionated or fixed in terms of questions which are. So if you ask about whether the Prime Minister is popular, then everybody will say yes, he's popular. But you don't even ask the question whether the economic measures are enough. If you don't ask that question, you will not know that what is the mood of the people and what is going to happen. I do hope that going forward, the economic numbers which have finally come are clear indicator for rolling up your sleeves and start getting onto the work. Hope that the government will respond to that.
I think we'll see a rise of startup communities in India. I mean, bearing in mind, India does have a young workforce. It has some of the smartest leaders of global companies. Are we hopeful nation for India for it to prosper coming out of this?
Well, what other choice is there? There aren't jobs. So if there aren't jobs for a skilled population which is already there, we have the largest number of skilled engineers and MBA and management graduates in the world without jobs. They will do something. They will try to do something on their own. Yeah. Unfortunately, we also know that large section of Indian startup community has been not looking at a very innovative area because of largely our biased education system, which doesn't show them the opportunity which are there in say for example in agriculture sector. Being a large sector, very few people still work there. So you have a lot of people in say e-commerce and investing in failed ventures. So a lot of e-commerce failed venture or food delivery ventures. So in just last 4 or 5 months, number of startups which have closed. We are yet to get the reports, but the reports that are coming are more than 50% startups have already closed down, which is already, it's a very large number of closures.
Are these closures of businesses that were funded previously through funding rounds?
Largely funded by angel investment and early stage investment firms. Yeah. There's a very, very large number of closures which has happened. But going forward, like we said, that's the only opportunity which is there.
Yeah, and if you were in the startup ecosystem, apart from agri-tech, which you're in, what would you say are the other sectors to be looking at? I'd be talking to somebody around biotech, the healthcare, because the Indian healthcare sector, there's a huge opportunity there, like agri-tech. It's been underdeveloped. In
health, obviously, for obvious reasons, but the cost of health delivery itself is a problem. India has a very high cost of health model, very high cost model of health service delivery. That is an unfortunate reality. A lot of good work is done in South India, but that's not there in North India as of now. Low cost health service delivery models that are there. So that remains a challenge. Of course, health is a very important area. Education, because large amount of digital education is now the norm, and going forward might be a norm for a longer period of time. 92% people in the country students in the country do not have access to digital education at all. Not even access. We are not even talking about having access and not even able to do that. They don't have access. They don't have instrument to access. 92% of students. So there is an obvious requirement for that.
90% of students don't have access.
Yes. Only 8% students are right now attending classroom on digital classroom. So that's another area. Financial services is another area. Insurance is another area. Logistics is another area, because logistics is a major challenge in the country. Helping small businesses creating aggregation model for small businesses and funding small businesses is another area which is there. In fact, very interestingly, if you look into the portfolios of new investment portfolios of people like Flipkart and Amazon, all of them are focused on creating digital products for lending to small businesses, which is a very interesting area where largely Indian financial institutions have been very poorly invested in.
Yeah.
So these are few areas which I think, and like I said, agriculture would be the best area to invest in.
That is fascinating. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. I think I could talk to you for hours about the Indian economy. And so, guys, if you've enjoyed this interview, please comment, ask questions. I'm sure Vijay would be happy to answer any questions in regards to whether it be the startup ecosystem, whether it be on the agri-tech. If somebody wanted to reach out and connect with you, what's the best way forward?
They can reach out to me on LinkedIn, or you can provide to them my email address as well.
Fabulous. What we're going to do is put Vijay's details in the comment section below, description. If you want to reach out to him, feel free to. We'll also include a link about some of the work that you're doing, you and your organisation. I think it's fascinating. I wish you all the success. I would love to get you back on in a couple of months' time and get your take on how things are moving forward. Hopefully, we'll see more opportunities coming from India. With that said, thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed this recording today, and we'll see you on our next recording. Thank you. Bye-bye.